Good morning and welcome to the Point. Another busy week for presidential politics. Donald Trump back in Michigan. We're told he did a fundraiser in West Michigan and then this appearance in Novi on Friday.
And we're going to tell millions and millions of unemployed Americans my favorite 2 words: you're hired. When we get it going, folks, millions of jobs are going to come pouring back into our country. We're going to reverse the trend. Right now, we have a superhighway. It goes in one direction, out of our country. Our jobs are gone. Our money's gone. Our wealth is gone. We owe $20 trillion. Obama has doubled the debt, doubled it in his term in office. $20 trillion. And we haven't done anything. Our roads are bad. Our schools are bad. Our airports are bad. Our hospitals are bad. Our bridges, our tunnels, they're all falling apart. You know, it's one thing if we would have spent the money and fixed our country. We've spent $6 trillion in the Middle East. We could have rebuilt our country twice.
Earlier in the week, it was the wife of Senator Tim Kaine, the vice presidential nominee for the Democratic ticket, talking about education and politics.
I'm fascinated by your background. You are the daughter of the first Republican governor of Virginia since Reconstruction. You said in here, and I was reading earlier today, the only person who has lived in the governor's mansion as a child and as an adult. You have been around politics for a very long time. What do you make of this cycle, which I think by any measure is unusual?
Well, you know, Rick, it does feel like this is a cycle where we have some very, very stark choices. Yes, you are right. I have been in politics since I was literally, well, I guess probably safe to say before I was born. What I took away from my childhood was that we can move somewhere like Virginia forward on race relations, and that's a really, really important thing when we have leadership that helps bring people together. And that was the role my dad played, and I'm very proud of it. He just turned 93 last week, and Virginia has come a long way. And we as a nation are a come-together place, and I really believe the stronger together mem that is Hillary's motto. And some of the divisive rhetoric in this cycle that wants to push people apart is very, very troubling.
Your background in education as Secretary of Education in Virginia is something that you were talking about with educators today. And one of the things that the Clinton-Kaine ticket is very interested in, I talked to Senator Kaine a couple of weeks ago over in Ann Arbor, and talking about making college education either no charge or debt-free, or at least reducing it for many people. How does that move the country forward from an educational standpoint to give people more access?
Well, as you know, and as we discussed with the parents in there today, these days for children to be successful in 21st century jobs and civilization, really, we need some education after high school. It does not have to be 4-year college for everybody, but to be successful, to have a wage where you can support your family, you need some education after high school. We ought to be able to make that affordable. There are industrialized nations around the world who have figured this out, and we have not, at least not where we are now. And Hillary's proposals to make tuition-free community college, and I'm a huge fan of the community colleges, both as a pathway to great jobs and as a stepping stone to 4-year degrees as well. And to make 4-year degrees debt-free, where everybody needs to chip in and do their share, but that the federal government can do more, I think is incredibly important. And Hillary also has proposals to help reduce the debt burden for folks who are out there already carrying these enormous debts.
The K through 12 system is one that most every child is going to participate in, regardless of what happens in the higher education. What, from your perspective, do schools need to do, from your experience in Virginia? And I should point out, Virginia has a very diverse group of schools, from some very affluent districts in some parts of the state to some that are financially very challenged. So not unlike most states, but having experienced that, what do we need K through 12 that will level the playing field?
Well, we do, education is the pathway to successful futures, and we absolutely have to make sure that it's working for children from every zip code, especially the kids who need a great education as a pathway out of poverty. And many of our public education systems aren't really working for those kids who need it the most. And I think there's a widespread consensus that that's one of the important challenges in K-12 education, is how do we address those inequities. The difference is we've got some concrete policies on our side to help deal with it, and I've worked very, very hard in Virginia on those equity issues. How do we invest in our crumbling infrastructure? That's something Hillary's very passionate about, both as a job producer, but also as to help address some of those inequities. How do we help teachers be prepared to teach in our inner city environments? How do we help build community so that we can address, frankly, we have to address some of the poverty in the community through things like her proposals to raise the minimum wage, for family medical leave, for sick leave, to make those communities stronger, wrapping around those.
With just over 6 weeks before the election, you can expect to see a lot more of both tickets here in the state. Of course, we'll follow them every step of the way. We're back. More To the Point in just a moment. Welcome back to the Point. One of the state house races we'll be following closely this year is the 91st in Muskegon County. It's one of those districts prone to switch from Republican to Democrat to Republican and so on. Just 2 years ago, it was Democrat Colleen Lamonte who was defeated by former Representative Holly Hughes, the Republican. The two of those are matched up again. This time, Hughes is the incumbent. I'm always interested in people who take on this task of running for an office. This is a very narrowly divided district. It has changed from Republican to Democrat to Republican to Democrat. I don't know how many times since I've been covering it. And so once again, you're up for a general election. What makes you keep doing this when you know what a full-time job it, not just being a legislator,
Sure.
but when it comes to campaign cycle, this is a big job.
I do know it's a big job. We work it every day. It's still about hometown. Jobs in the economy and make a difference for our hometown and make sure that our kids and grandkids can stay in the area and that we thrive. So we've been working hard on that. Recently I had some port legislation go last Thursday, 98-9. Not many things go through 98-9, but it's all about the economy, and we're thinking that we got support from the right place, Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce, Consumers Power, even Mayor Bliss from Grand Rapids, I heard she's supporting it, and a number of other folks. So this will go to the Senate next. Basically, we want to increase the port commerce. On our side of the lake, we have the deepest port on the west side of the state, and Chicago takes 6 to 7 days for turnover. So maybe we can gain some of that economy and trade. And this isn't just about Muskegon either. It's the whole West Michigan. So that's why you see some of Grand Rapids and the ag community up north, et cetera, and south. Representative Roger Victory, who owns Victory Farms, said this is a great day for agriculture. So we're excited about the port. And then we're also we still concentrate on our Veterans Job Fair, not only for our veterans, but for our regular folks. This was the 5th year that we've done that, and I've seen a huge difference from when we started 5 years ago. People were looking for work. Now work's looking for people, and so slowly you're going to see some of those wages come up to try to fill the gap in competition for jobs. But we need more people back, more people working. It makes everything work a whole lot better. So jobs in the economy is the main thing that we're working on, but not only jobs in the economy, but education. We spent, budgeted $14.2 billion, more than ever before. It's historic records. So besides the port legislation, which is an economic tool for the next 30 years, I think, or the last 30 years, it's probably the best tool that we've ever had. Education is an important part of that as well. So we helped save the teachers' pension fund, taking it where it was a $48 billion hole to a $32 billion hole, and then Promise Zone legislation that I worked on with Senator Hansen and a few other people. We're actually, this fall, all schools are participating in the Promise Zone. We started out with 3 schools at the beginning of the year. raise privately funds over $1 million. And then we have all the districts included this fall. So we're looking at community college help and Baker College. Those two we'll start with, and hopefully down the line we'll get to four-year degrees as well. So jobs and the economy and making sure our kids are ready for those jobs, that's one of the most important things that we're looking at. So
I would ask that question because there was a time, and we chronicled it well, that not just here, but certainly here and elsewhere,
yeah,
there were people just looking for anything to do. But now the jobs that are available require some skill. And some of that skill is
Yes.
not necessarily a 4-year degree. The governor and many others, and I think in a bipartisan way, people
Yeah.
have talked about getting skilled trades and getting that kind of hands-on type of training. Particularly now, if you have job openings, you can't wait 2 years. So, I mean, there have to be some programs to get people kind of fast-tracked into those.
right. And working with our veterans when we're at that job fair, which 2/3 were other folks, actually that's what people talked about, is that education. And actually Senator Hansen helped. We voted for a $500,000 grant to our local Muskegon Tech Center, which is helping those kids. They had a job fair, they're doing it every year now at the Tech Center, where the kids can see what Muskegon's actually making. It's really cool. I listened to some of the kids at that job fair while visiting, and they said, gosh, we didn't know we made such cool things here in Muskegon. It gets them excited about the possibilities and their future here in our hometown. So part of that tech training is huge for us, as well as making sure our veterans are taken care of. I had a couple of bills that went through that'll help them get through college faster. They get credit for their knowledge. It saves them a whole year, which is a lot of money depending on what school you're in, and transition them faster, because that's most important because of the suicide rate, 22 a day or a little less. I guess it's adjusting right now. But we want to make sure they get credit and transition fast. We need them. They're valuable. And also the health care is very, very important. I have a bill that's gone through the House, it's going through the Senate, that will make sure we get quarterly reports on the Grand Rapids Veterans Home. And we have an ombudsman for them now, and we're also looking at getting accreditation.
Former Representative Democrat Colleen Lamonte is running again too. Well, you've been on both sides of the coin. You know what it's like to run in one of these races and win. You know what it's like to run and lose. I start with kind of the same place. What motivates you to do it again?
Well, I tell you, I was prepared to go back and kind of just melt back into my life, being a private citizen and, spending time with my kids and my family. But over and over again, I would continually ran into people in the community that were asking me, Colleen, you're going to run again, right? I'm so sorry you lost. We need you back in Lansing. We need somebody out there fighting for us. And the more I heard it, the more I knew that I couldn't just, ignore that responsibility and the obligation that I have to our community.
It is one thing to feel an obligation. It's another thing to take on an undertaking in a narrowly drawn district that, as I pointed out in one of my early interviews, has changed every 2 years more often than any other district that I've covered in 20 plus years.
Yes.
In West Michigan. So you know the challenges you face. You also know that there may be a competitive advantage for Democrats in a presidential year, but as we discussed a few minutes ago before we started, this is an unusual presidential year. So
Yes.
it's a big undertaking.
Yes.
And so when you do that, you know what you're in for.
Absolutely. And our goal is to reach out to the people in the community, let them know what it is I'm out here fighting for. It is fighting for our middle class. It is fighting for seniors and for our kids' education and their future. And hopefully we get enough people to understand that, I am the candidate that's going to be the voice for them in Lansing, and then it'll be all about getting them out to vote in November.
Let's talk a little bit about what you want to do if you can return to the seat that you once held. You talk about the middle class. Here in this district, like so many other places, the recession hit hard.
Yes.
There has been some positive movement coming back, but like many other districts, there's still more to do. What do you want to do if you're reelected?
Absolutely. And I think, we have seen unemployment has gotten better in our state, as has the rest of the country. We've seen the entire economy has kind of buoyed everybody up. But specifically here in my community, and I hear this on the doors as I go out talking to people day after day, You know, and you look at the jobs that we have available. A lot of them are temporary agency jobs. They are jobs that pay just barely above the minimum wage. And so these are not jobs that are providing the people of my community any sense of financial security or stability within their own situation. We have got to get better paying jobs here in our community. We have got to get the jobs that we do have here a way to get better wages for people. You know, I think our middle class deserves a raise. I think that people are aching from having to struggle for so long, you know, making that decision of what am I going to pay this month? Which bill am I going to have to try to push off to the next month? And living that paycheck to paycheck life, people are tired. They're tired. And I want to get our state and the people of my community to a place of, you know, middle class prosperity again, where they're not having to struggle and worry about everything every single week.
When you talk about getting the middle class a raise, the minimum wage in Michigan will gradually creep up, but you want to do more than that.
Well, and I think it's more than just the minimum wage. It is middle class wages. We've seen, you know, median wages in our state drop by $7,000 over the last decade. You know, that's a lot. I mean, that's a good chunk of college tuition that could be paid by parents. It's a good, you know, it's a lot of mortgage payments that could be made. And, you know, unfortunately, we're just not seeing the recovery that we should have here in our state.
When you think about that recovery, does that have a component in it that goes to your former life from education? Because one of the things we hear is that there are jobs. We're told by some that they're pretty good paying jobs. Mm-hmm. But they require skills. Maybe not a 4-year degree, but they have to have some technical skill. Is that part of the component?
Absolutely, and I think the disinvestment that we've seen in our state, in our education system, has been a huge failure when it comes to our kids. We've seen, I talk to my former colleagues all the time, and the classroom sizes are atrocious at this point. U of M just had a study that came out that absolutely proved the connection that lower classroom sizes do lead to better student achievement and better learning that happens in those classrooms. And with all the disinvestment that we've had, there are teachers that we need back in those classrooms to bring those classroom sizes down. And unfortunately, we just haven't seen that happen here in our state. We have got to decide that paying lip service to education is not enough. We actually need to provide the resources and funding that our schools need to get those teachers back in the classrooms, bring those classroom sizes down.
What does that look like in terms of dollars and cents? You know what a battle it is when you get ready to put together a budget, and
sure.
You know that so much of the budget is already constrained because of earmarked spending and things that have already been spoken for. How do you get there?
You know, it's a matter of priorities. We either decide that the school aid fund is meant to be towards our kids' classrooms and getting better K through 12 education, and stop dipping into it every time the general fund comes up short. And then when it comes to the idea of giving tax credits or tax, you know, breaks to, you know, corporations that are actually doing a pretty good job now in our state. You know, we've seen a lot of corporate profits have been boosted at this point. We need everybody paying into the system to make sure that we have an educated workforce that we can offer to attract new businesses, to attract new industries that want to come here in our state.
And retired Lieutenant Colonel Max Rixey is running as a Libertarian. Well, it's not the first time around that you've run. You've been involved in politics for a while and taken some other attempts. What makes you want to run for this seat now as a Libertarian?
To make a difference, give people a choice, and just be involved.
There's a certain level of disenchantment with government out there that has certainly been evident in this cycle. Does that give somebody like you, when you say to make a difference, does that give you a broader audience than you might normally have?
Well, I think when all things are sorted out, myself running as a Libertarian independent is not going to raise anybody's radar screen any higher than it normally was if I was just running as a Democrat or Republican. I don't think that makes that much difference. I think a majority of people are, you know, thinking Democrat, a majority of people are thinking Republican. But at the same time, well, I've run against these two before. Both of them has run both before, so it's kind of a sad commentary when you have the same three people running for the last 6 years. You know, so I think there's a nice choice, but this time I'm on November 8th ballot, so people have a better choice at the end game instead of the primary.
When you look at this district, when you look at what's happened, say over the past 6 years, what is it that you would like to do to help this district in whatever areas you seem to think it needs help?
Well, Muskegon County needs jobs. It needs employment. Right, and also we have a problem with Muskegon Heights, where they have the state police. I think there's last count there's probably half a dozen state police in Muskegon Heights, and we need to do something. And it's not just there's crime, black on black crime. I mean, certainly that is an issue, but the root issue is there's jobs have lost. People haven't got a place to go work. And I think I would work hard, and I know I would work hard to bring jobs back here, and that's why I'm such a strong supporter of Donald Trump, because the job that I worked prior to going to college was Camelot Cannon as a foundry mold setter. It's not there anymore. Ravenna mold setter. I used to do that before going to college. That's not there. So I think Trump is spot on in bringing these jobs back. We have Ford Motor Company going to build billions of dollars worth of I went brain dead there. Billions of dollars worth of factories in Mexico, and that's just part of it. It's going to communist China, it's going to Mexico, it's going to Vietnam, and we need to make those jobs right here. We can't continue to have this job loss, and like Hillary Clinton just doesn't get it. Her and her husband, pushing NAFTA, sucked out multi-millions of jobs, hard-paying, good-paying jobs with defined pensions and defined health benefits, to all these foreign countries. And Trump is the only one talking about it. Whether he can do it or not, that remains to be seen. But he's the only one talking about saving Social Security. The Democrats and the Republicans work together to tax our Social Security. Why are we taxing Social Security when for millions of Americans, Republicans and Democrats, along with a few independents, that's their main income, because they can't accumulate enough for retirement for a decent retirement. They depend on Social Security. And Trump realizes that. Trump gets it. For being a bombastic billionaire. Well, she's a billionaire too, but Trump got his billions by actually building something. Hillary got it by influence peddling, but that's another case. As state representative, I would support the Trump agenda for president, maybe moderate it in some ways, but focus on Michigan, bringing jobs here, and also enhance Muskegon County.
When you look at the state legislature, there are 110 members over in the House, and they'll all be up for election, or some will be term limited and leave. Where would you fit into that mix? If you were elected as a libertarian, you're liable to be in a pretty lonesome area, given that Republicans have their caucus and Democrats have theirs. How would you function?
Well, I guarantee I wouldn't be lonesome. After 32 years in the military, going from private to lieutenant colonel, I get to call myself as an American. I get to call myself as somebody who's going to be actually a state representative, whether a Democrat or Republican. I'll get along with both of them. I won't be on the radical one side or the other. I hope to be part of the cure for the legislative war. Now it's Republican war on public schools, but the MEA is so left liberal democratic that they don't have any currency either with the state legislature. So that's the thing, I can actually go for the middle road. I want to sit on the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee. The Grand Rapids Veterans Home is an abomination. They privatized. Being the past commander of the local Fruitport VFW post, we used to do a lot for the Grand Rapids veterans. And when they privatized, they stopped coming over here. We gave them a free meal. We gave them, bingo and a lot of other things, and they enjoyed it. It was their night out of town. And the privatization people wouldn't do it, wouldn't come over here. And these people don't have a lot. And my Rhino Republican sits on the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee. And I don't understand why, because she's not a veteran of anything except being a political establishment. And she helped privatize and savage the care that these people get. I'm sure you're aware of that they don't have a lot there. And I think that's just one area we part. And also the legislature taking away senior citizens' pensions. By their pension tax. They didn't take away the pensions, but the pension tax. And that costs seniors thousands of dollars, which they could ill afford.
It's a race we'll keep an eye on, and we're back with more To the Point in a moment. So we took a look at one of those state house races that will be on the ballot in November. Remember, all 110 seats up for a vote, so make sure you check them out before you head to the polls. Now, for the big presidential race, we're still keeping an eye on that. The polls continue to fluctuate, and we've got about 6 weeks before everybody heads into the booth and makes the decision for 2016. But between now and then, there'll be plenty of twists and turns, and we'll have them for you right here Sunday morning. To the Point.